Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're going to be returning to War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition, our Let's Play series, playing against Lodrick now. I've got to keep a track. It's my third opponent in this particular game, but we are into April of 1942, middle of April. It is April 18th of 1942. We're in the midst of a ceasefire at the moment, not like a full-blown ceasefire, but kind of a pause, if you will, in major operations, giving Lodrick some time to get up to speed because he's just recently taken things over from Lieutenant Rainbow Slash, who was our previous opponent. Now, we have spotted some Japanese carriers north of the Celeb Sea, so we'll have to see if we get any indication of where they may have gone. We also spotted what we think is a bombardment task force up in that area as well, so we'll have to see, again, if we get any info on that. We've deployed submarines to kind of try and act as a tripwire to get some visual on the enemy before they come after us, and we've got some not troop transports, some patrol boats bombarding one of our S-boats here. We've also got a Dutch submarine north of Rabaul firing torpedoes against a Japanese submarine there. It looks like they missed. And now we're going to see some some ASW work go on. Yeah, MacArthur was Army, so there were considerable Army elements involved. 32nd Infantry Division was a National Guard division made up primarily of Wisconsin soldiers, and that fought, I think it was engaged in combat, I want to say, more days than any other unit in the entire war from the American side, and it was heavily involved in like the Guadalcanal, or not the Guadalcanal, the New Guinea campaign. Okay. Philippines was almost entirely Army as well. That was a major land invasion there. Miracle Division, definitely Army. The USS Dolphin firing at some patrol boats here in the Strait of Malacca. So it's interesting. Maybe he's trying to clear the strait for an eventual carrier raid. We'll have to see. We have been speculating for a bit that he may be launching an Indian Ocean raid here soon. We'll also take a look and see what we decided to do with the Americal Division in this turn. As you may remember, they were nearing Perth on the west coast of Australia. We were going to send them to India and Burma, but we'll talk about that a little bit in a moment. Yeah, Steve, a little bit of an earlier stream. Photo reconnaissance unable to proceed to target due to weather. We've got some Japanese bombers north of Port Moresby, which has fallen to the Japanese, bombing troops there. We've only got a handful of troops left behind. We've got some Japanese sort of, I'm assuming these are trainees, bombing some of our troops here in central China. Some Sonias and Ans. Quite a few number of them. Looks like maybe, what, 60 aircraft or so total between the two raids. I didn't quite get the math on that. Okay. Not a lot else happening here. We've got some SB-3s. Dropping some bombs in central China, and we've got some Japanese fighter aircraft arriving in China. So the last few turns, we haven't really seen much of Japanese fighter cover in China for a while now, but it does look like he's deployed at least one squadron of Oscars and Zeros here in central China to deal with our SB-3 Chinese bombers here, which have been pounding some Japanese troops pulling back in central China. But now that he's got fighter cover here, unescorted bombers, and only a handful of them are not doing terribly great. The AV assault value, we'll take a look at that, Big Bang. So it looks like it's two groups of aircraft. Kano QS-1 with A6M20s, 5 of them, and then the 10th IF with Oscars. Meanwhile, apparently we lost a submarine north of Rabaul there. It says the SS Pike sinks. Must have been from Japanese air attacks, because I didn't see the Pike depth charged by any submarine or by any surface ships. So he may be operating some fairly effective ASW work out of Rabaul. All right, and now we've got 6 British Blenheim 4 bombers coming in here in northern China, and we've got another Japanese fighter intercept going on here. Again, first we've seen of any Japanese fighters in northern China in a while. These happen to be 9 Ki-43 1C Oscars against these Blenheims. Report says we lost 2 Blenheims. He lost no fighters. These appear to be from the 9th Sentai, so a second Oscar squadron spotted in Japan or in China. So he's definitely reallocated a fair amount of fighter aircraft, at least 3 squadrons or groups, to China, which is interesting. Meanwhile, we've got a Dutch submarine here going after an AKE. This is an ammunition replenishment ship. Ooh, we got a torpedo hit. Yeah. We got a second hit. 2 Dutch torpedoes slamming into the side of this AKE. These are very valuable ships here near the Caroline Islands. The AKEs are very important in allowing surface ships to replenish their ammunition without having to go to very large ports. So they allow you to operate much more effectively with like bombardment task forces and other things like that. So it looks like we took 1 hit from, I think, a deck gun. We put 2 torpedoes into the side of the Gotamaru, heavy damage against an AKE. And we hear a little bit of gurgling, which indicates that they probably sank as well. We also have a Dutch submarine near Espiritu Santo firing torpedoes at a Japanese destroyer. These guys really love to torpedo destroyers and miss. Fortunately for them, not too badly hurt. Yes, Mr. Hermit, I would compare it to PTO, but on steroids for sure. All right, Anarcho. Glad. Quick requisition all Dutch torpedoes for American use. PTO Hoffman is sort of an old classic series of games. I think, was it made by Koei? There were like 4 or 5, maybe 6 of them. PTO 2 stands out as the only one I've played, but I played 4 also on PlayStation 3, but the PTO 2 really stuck out. The thing that PTO did better than any game, really the only game I've ever seen do it, was it had sort of cabinet meetings for both the Japanese and the Americans, and you had to fight for resources against the army. You were playing as the Navy, and so you had to like make arguments for different priorities for missions and for supplies. And I don't think I've ever seen any game, I think, as astutely but simply at the same time cover the inter-service rivalries that existed in the Pacific Theater of Operations. The combat was very simplified, but I think the logistical side of things and the resourcing side of things from like a governmental perspective was very well done. Okay. So that is the turn. We'll go ahead and take a look at the results. Let's take a look at the air results first. So it says we lost 5 aircraft in the air and 4 operational losses. He lost 3 ops. So it looks like we lost 3 Blenheim 4s in the bombing in China. In air-to-air combat, we lost 2 SB-3s, which are some of the few Chinese bombers in air-to-air combat, 1 operationally. 2 Blenheim 1s to ops losses. I'm not sure where those would have been lost. A Lily for him, an Oscar for him, a Mavis for him, and a Catalina for us. I'm assuming well, actually, I don't know if the Mavis would have been related to the AKE. Probably not. So we see some troops, or we see some ships here. We've got a task force spotted with 5 ships moving east toward Canton Island. If this really is a CS, it's a float plane tender, which could indicate he's trying to get better intelligence on shipping moving between Pearl Harbor and Australia here in the Central Pacific. Or it could just be a bad intel report. We also see this task force moving west with an AV. That would be a float plane tender, I want to say. Or not, no, not a float plane tender. It's just an aircraft tender, like a patrol. Maybe it is a float. I can't remember what AVE stands for. AV. I think it might be a float plane tender, like give air operations support to float planes in harbor. And this thing's moving west. This is part of, I think, what the AKE was in as well. So he may be pulling ships out of Funafuti or Vaidapu. Not sure. Although, where did our sub go in this area? Maybe that's not where our sub was. So it's pulling west. I think our sub might have been a Espiritu Santo, but I'm not really sure. We have some subs in Espiritu Santo. We lost a sub north of Rabaul the Pike. The O-23, minor damage. The KV-8, no damage. So I'm curious if he's got like ASW flying out of Rabaul that hurt us. If we take a look here at ship sunk last turn, it looks like well, it wasn't the Pike. We lost a sub? Well, this is, so we got the AKE Gotomaru. It's saying we lost the KV-7 to a 100 kilogram bomb near Kving. So it wasn't the Pike then? Interesting. I thought it said the Pike sank, but either way, near Kving to 100 kilogram bomb. So it was airborne ASW. Some cruisers and destroyers moving northwest, maybe pulling ships out of Rabaul. PC moving west. Okay, so we spotted the Kidobutai, or at least was it the Akagi that we spotted a few turns ago? They look like they're about 1 hex out of Singapore. So these guys are still moving west. Presumably they're going to stop and refuel at Singapore. But that is a sighting here on at least 2 carriers based on the aviation complement here of 148 aircraft. And so these guys are moving probably to Singapore. We do have a line of subs here in the Strait of Malacca here in the northern edge of the strait, as well as a couple in the southern edge. So hopefully we will spot them if they leave Singapore and move north. We did have some intel from a few weeks ago that the mini Kidobutai was also at Singapore. And so that's a pretty good indication he may be consolidating forces near Singapore. Now, he could just be using the good port and supplies at Singapore to move south to crush Batavia, which currently has 1,070 assault value here for troops that are pretty well supplied at over 49,000 supply, pretty well defended at over level 4 forts. They're up to about 9%. But I think more likely than not, he's probably going to make a raid into the Indian Ocean. He just recently took Port Blair, so that kind of takes the cap off of recon pushing really far south. So he could make a raid into the Bay of Bengal or the Indian Ocean. So we'll have to take some precautions there because our fleet carriers are in the Indian Ocean. We also do have some troops here, the 14th British Brigade, some reconnaissance unit and RAF units on their way into Sri Lanka. You know, I had hoped, I think, to push them forward to Rangoon. We had already unloaded 1 unit here in Sri Lanka, the 16th British Brigade. So we could have like 2/3 of a British division, and then I think about a full Indian division on the island of Sri Lanka to kind of help if he tries to make an invasion there. At Rangoon, we've been unloading forces here. So we actually unloaded all the troops now, and we just have about another 11,000 supplies, which are currently unloading here. So you can see that the 23rd British Brigade has already unloaded here. The 254th Armored Brigade has pulled back here and is going to rest, hopefully to replace some of their obsolete tankettes, which we do have replacements for in pool, but also to see if we can't get their morale up a bit. Their experience is really low. It's a very green unit, but at least get their morale up a bit so they can be a more effective unit. We have the 7th Armored coming south here, Desert Rat unit here near Prom, I think that is, and in northwestern Burma, or at least along the coast of, I guess, southwestern Burma. And you can see these guys are really good units with 104 Stuart tanks and very good experience. We have quite a bit of AV in the Burma area, but not all in one place. So we've got the 7th Australian Division, which are desert, I think they're Desert Rats, although it says their experience is 59, so they're not perfect. The 7th Australian, the 18th British Division, the British Division are green, but they've got good morale. The 1st Burma Division, which has good morale, but also green. The 17th Indian Division, which is a little bit better experience. They're trained at least with decent morale. 46th Indian Brigade and 8th Medium Artillery Regiment here. So we've got 4 divisions here, 4 full divisions, 300 plus AV each, with about 1,700 assault value just north of Mulman, where he's pulled, I think, what was the Thai army out of Mulman. So it might not be a terrible idea to make a drive from Mulman in a few days when our ceasefire wraps up. Steve, thanks for the resub. Appreciate the support. And Halcyon, thank you for the raid. But we also have some troops here, a small rifle battalion to the northeast of the main line here near Mulman. It looks like he's pulling troops out of Chiang Mai, which I don't know why he'd do that, but I know we spotted, I think it was a division or something like that to the west of Chiang Mai when he took over, and he's pulled them back, I think, to get their supply situation fixed. He's probably trying to get at our 13th Burma, which is trying to make a slashing move and to cut the supply to Chiang Mai. So we've got those divisions, 1,700 assault value south of Rangoon. In Rangoon, we've got another 400 assault value, so we've got about 2,100 assault value there. The 7th Armored will add another 140 And then we've got a couple of garrison units, which I don't really think factor in all that much. And then we've got, I want to say, the 84th Indian Brigade also marching south with about 109. So 25 to 2,600 assault value currently in Burma, of which at least 800 or so are high quality troops. We also do have some Chinese units on the way. So the 22nd New Chinese Division here is already in theater, making its way toward Pegu. We'll want to make sure that they can draw reinforcements and supply. We've got the 88th Chinese Division, the 2nd Reserve Division, the 200th Chinese Division, all on their way. At the end of the day, what we're moving in is the 5th Chinese Corps, which currently has all of these units here, and all of them are moving toward Burma, with the exception of one unit, which is just waiting for some replacements to arrive at Lashio before they start moving. But we're going to be moving, 6 units total to form the 5th Corps. And then these guys are going to use the supply in Burma to replenish their stocks and their squads and their equipment, because we've got a huge amount of supply in Burma right now. We've got 79,000 in Rangoon itself. We have 13,000 at Pegu. Mandalay has 16,000. Lashio has 12,000. Tuai Gai has almost 10,000. I don't remember if I said Pegu has 13. Tongu has 14. Migway has 14. So we've got a huge amount of supply, over 200,000 supply all told in the Burma sector. And that's slowly moving into China. It's really helping our supply situation in China get better. But we are in the process of trying to get that supply to move from Burma to China. China's supply situation is relatively good as well. It's more than doubled its starting supply. And so that's allowed us to be a little bit more aggressive there. We have pulled a large number of our troops out of India to reinforce Burma, but we still do have several divisions here. The 19th and the 20th are here at Dhampur. Chittagong has a couple of the 7th Division and the 75th Brigade. We've got some additional troops sort of stationed all over as garrison troops, and we've also got troops that are digging in to try and defend some of these bases a little bit more effectively. A couple of brigades at Impal as well. I know there's some divisions at Calcutta as well. So we get the 23rd Division and 36th Brigade at Calcutta. We've got 3 Indian brigades on Sri Lanka, and we'll soon have 2 British Rifle brigades there. I want to say we have a couple of divisions, or a division or something like that, in Madras, the 26th Division. So you still got a fair number of divisions in India to defend in the event that he makes a flanking move and tries to go for India. But I don't think he would go for India without first going for Sri Lanka, because if he doesn't take out Burma, he's got to take out Sri Lanka to at least secure his left flank. Otherwise, he's got both flanks of any supplies coming into India vulnerable from strong enemies on either of his flank of his advance. And that, I think, is probably too big of a risk, unless he parks the carrier group in the Bay of Bengal to keep everything suppressed. But I think doing that for an extended period of time is not terribly wise. So we would do that here. So that's that. I want to say we have the 70th British Infantry Division, which arrived at Karachi, but they're massively undersupplied or resourced for whatever reason. It's a division that doesn't have any infantry assigned to it, which I don't really understand why. Like, there's some of those divisions. Let's see here. What else do we have going on? Oh, we also have some Americans on the way. We are reinforcing the India theater as well, because it seems like that's where there's a likelihood of serious conflict. So we've got some defense battalions here and some transports with no fuel. They're going to be reinforcing Diego Garcia, a small defense battalion. We've got the 3rd Marine Raiders and the reformed Wake Island Defense, which are also going to Diego Garcia. So they'll have some coastal guns and things like that to protect our supply line to Sri Lanka. We might want to do the same thing to Adu. They're both kind of out there. Additionally, we have considerable reinforcements on the way. I want to say we have over 300 aircraft here on the way to the Burma theater. You can see all of these pursuit groups of P-40s and P-39s on their way. Some float planes also on their way. Some bombers on their way. We might even have some Marines on the way. You can see these are some B-26 bombers. The third bomb group, the first USMC Air Wing Base Force, so some aviation support. All told, we've got over 300 aircraft on the way to the India-Burma theater to assist us in defending that as well. We also have some considerable troops here. So we've got these are the aircraft here. That says 13,000 troops, but we've got 7,000 troops of the 754th Tank Battalion, as well as a Combat Engineer Regiment on their way there. We have some additional troops which aren't there yet or here. They're still a ways away. They're still like a month or more away. But we've got the 27th Infantry Division somewhere back here on the way to the Panama Canal, and they're going to make a move to the India Theater as well as some field artillery units with some 155 millimeters. Halcyon, thanks for the resub there. Additionally, we are unloading a division in Western Australia to protect that sector from any potential thrust. It is a pretty vulnerable area, but we're unloading the AmeriCal division, which was a division that got its name from being deployed to New Caledonia. That's where the Cal comes from. Although for some reason they're named that before they were ever deployed there. So we're unloading them to defend the western portion of Australia. We have, I want to say, a bunch of Australian divisions in the east, including at least one Desert Rat division. So we're buffing up Australia a little bit as well. We just purchased the 40th Infantry Division. I'm trying to remember where exactly they were, but we've got another American Infantry Division, the 40th, which we just purchased with political points right here. So these guys are also going to be loaded up on transports and moved here to somewhere useful, so we can use them. And we're moving our battleships back to Pearl ever so slowly. We've got transports and things moving all over, and that's the situation that we find ourselves in. We also did upgrade some aircraft in China, so we've got the AVG group, the American Volunteer Group here. And so we have upgraded the two units that were still left. Actually, we moved them into Burma, didn't we? To use the supply there. Where? Calcutta. So we moved them to Calcutta. 54 P-40 Warhawks in these AVG groups. These are some of the best pilots we have. It does use up quite a bit of our pool, and these guys do have to withdraw in July, but we've got time to send those aircraft back to the pool. So 54 crack pilots in P-40Es and 27 crack pilots in P-38Es are the three groups of the AVG group, all operating in the India-Burma section here. Yeah, they're at 44 fatigue because they just flew out of China, so that's why they're so tired. So we do know that they're fatigued. No one's going to be flying this turn anyway because they don't have any ready aircraft because we just upgraded their aircraft. It's going to take a little while to get these guys up to speed, so they're going to be resting for a bit as well. So they had a long flight over the mountains in their H-81s, which are the P-40 variant that they flew in China. We should see how many of those things we get back. I don't think we can give any of them to the Chinese Air Force, but we may end up getting like 20 or 30 of them. It would be cool if we could give those to the Chinese Air Force. Oh, the pilots in Rangoon? This P-40 group here, the 224th Pursuit group here with ABDA, flying P-40s with 44 fatigue. We're working on some of their training as well at the moment. So we know the carriers are here, or at least some carriers are there. Do we see anything on the way to Batavia? I mean, we see ships moving in that direction, but nothing that I can like point to and say they're clearly moving battleships or anything like that. The troops at Clark Field, after counterattacking and wrecking 2 Japanese divisions at Bataan, don't have the strength to push forward. So they're very low on supply here, and the situation's not getting any better at Clark Field, but they're using the terrain there to hang on out ahead of Bataan. And then we've relocated a lot of our shipping into Sydney, as well as some CAs. Oh, we also have some additional ships coming online soon, as is always the case for the Allies. But we've got a troop transport arriving tomorrow, the Macaulay at Balboa. We've got a couple of ships arriving in 2 days. We've got the Illustrious arriving in 9 days. If we take a look at the American carriers, which are currently upgrading at Colombo, we have 2 carriers currently with 3 days left on their repair mode with their refit. So those guys will be back in action here in just a handful of days. If we go to Colombo, we can take a look and see what our British battleships from Force Z are doing. It looks like the Prince of Wales has 247 more days left in repair. I'm debating moving her to the east coast of the U.S. to speed things up because those shipyards are more efficient. And then we've got the Repulse, which has 6 days left till she'll be rejoining the fleet. A nice fast battleship, a battle cruiser. And I kind of feel like that's everything. I know this was fast, but yeah, 240 days help. And she did take like 3 or 4 torpedoes and was able to limp away, but she had like 80 flood damage. So, hey, Goldpoke, good to see you. Fuel situation in Australia is good. I can't really like show you everything just because I don't have the tracker up, but we've got 820,000 supply at Sydney. We've got 363,000 fuel at Sydney. Melbourne has 100,000 fuel as well. And Perth has 130,000 fuel. And we've been unloading additional fuel in Perth. We've been pumping a lot of fuel into Perth. And our supply situation is greatly benefiting in Australia from the fact that when we were playing XTRG in the first part of this game, he did not shut down my convoys from Palembang, from Palembang and then later Oosthaven. He did not shut down my oilers moving from Palembang, Oosthaven, and the island of Java to Perth. And so we pulled, I want to say, close to 400,000 fuel out of the Dutch East Indies in the first month and a half of the war. These are very short shuttle routes. And so we pulled out a huge sum of fuel from the Dutch East Indies. One, that's fuel that won't go to Japan's industry. 2, that is way, like, that was the amount of fuel that we pulled out with those tankers would have taken 2 to 3 times longer or more to bring to Australia from the US. And so that fuel was pumped into Australia. I think we pulled like 30,000 oil out as well, raw oil out also, which could be used by the refinery in Melbourne, which I think is now out of oil, but that did allow us to produce some as well. And so you can see like Australia's industries churning through the fuel and converting it to supply. And so Evoken says in the chat, we've got over 1 million supply in Australia. So Australia is doing well. If you play the game right as the Allies, you can just ship fuel to Australia, and then Australia produces all the supply you need to move into the South Pacific. In some ways, that can be efficient. Allied players don't have to do that. They can also just ship the supply wherever they really need it from the U.S. West Coast, but that's an option. Resources, Australia kind of produces its own, I believe. We didn't really pull any resources out of the Dutch East Indies. I know they produce some of their own anyway. Okay. Yeah, Australia produces a lot of resources. We still haven't lost in the Dutch East Indies, although we're in the process of losing. We've got Tijlap surrounded with very little supply. Batavia has about 50,000 supply. And whatnot. We did wreck like 2 Japanese divisions at Singapore. We also wrecked like 2 divisions in the Philippines, as well as some pretty bloody battles in China. So we've also been giving the Japanese army some tough times, I believe, as well. Meanwhile, if we take a look at Chiang Mai, it looks like he's brought a few fighters back into Chiang Mai. He had kind of pulled, I think, most of them out of there, but now reports back up to 60. Bangkok, meanwhile, it has 180 fighters. We've shot down more of them than they of us so far, so the war in the air is going pretty well for us. But it's, certainly I anticipate there being a large air battle for Burma soon. Maybe even involving the Japanese carrier task force. We lost 3 pilots KIA last turn, but they're probably all bomber pilots. None of our aces that I can see here got shot down. We have a bunch of aces. Curtis and Seldaws, thanks for the follow. Okay. Move an armored unit into China. I want to secure Bataan first, Big Bang. China is holding out okay. There was a move on Cyan. We wrecked like 2 divisions south of Cyan. He appears to be pulling back. My belief is that he's going to make either a major thrust towards central China through the mountains to go straight for Chongqing in the jugular, or what I think more likely, he's going to basically build the death stack and move for Guilin, and then move up this major roadway to Chongqing. Because then he can just ship supplies up toward Nanjing or Wuchang, transfer them over the good roads here, and then just drive them along the main roadways up through central and southern China. The thing is, because of the way that the industrialization is focused in the east of China, he has the advantage. Like, in theory, we have interior lines, but our roads suck and the terrain is bad. And so our troops moving in interior lines are slow. His troops, meanwhile, on the exterior, that's not a word, on the exterior of the position can actually relocate much more quickly than we can. So SB3's got hurt pretty bad there. What else do you guys want to see? How am I doing in China compared to real life? Worse than the Chinese in real life. The Japanese, the game doesn't do a good job of modeling China, in my opinion. And the reason the game doesn't do a good job of modeling China is it undersells the difficulty the Japanese had of supplying troops far forward. It doesn't do a great job of representing the need for garrison troops. It does have garrison requirements, but they're not nearly what they probably should be. The Japanese have much stronger offensive firepower in 41 and 42 in China, so that most competent Japanese players can actually overrun China by the end of 42, which is not realistic. Japan was, the nationalists were stronger than I think the game gives them credit to, especially on the defensive. The guerrilla warfare by the communists and otherwise were much more impactful, and the Japanese didn't have the spare resources to make major efforts both there and in the South Pacific for the considerable expansions they need to make. So realistically, Japan had very little hope of overrunning China in the Chinese theater, but in the game, they can definitely do it. But I think one thing that's really helping us, because China gets a huge amount of reinforcements, especially infantry, less so equipment, but definitely infantry. One of the things that's definitely helping us is the fact that he's been slow in Burma. And he's allowed us to, well, not Lodrick himself, but his predecessors, Lieutenant Rainbow Slash and XTRG, neither of them closed the Andaman Sea or the Bay of Bengal. And so we have poured over 400,000 or 500,000 supplies since the game started into Rangoon. Similar story as Australia, so that Burma is flush with supplies. So one, that allows us to replenish the troops that we have there much more quickly. Two, as long as you keep Rangoon and the rail line or the roadway to China open, you get like 2,000 free supply in Western China every day. But in addition to that, we're also moving 500 or 600 or so supply over the roads via osmosis, because when you have a huge amount of supply stacked in Burma, and China is relatively supply poor with a lot of units that need supply, the way the mechanics work in the game is it's going to pull supply from where it is to where it's needed across these roadways. These roadways do have some maximums in each of these towns. I think it's between like 400 or 500. But basically, we're pulling extra supply through to China. And so our supply situation in China we've doubled the total amount of supply we have in China from the starting point of the game. And that is huge to allowing a Japanese or a Chinese player or an American player or an allied player or whatever at fighting effectively in China. How does MP work in the game, Tunny? It's play by email. So basically, I issue all of my orders. I hit end turn up here. I then send the file to the player I'm playing against. They get the file. They open it up. Now, Japan is always the first to get to issue their orders. So the way it works, basically, Japan opens the turn. The game will generate a replay, a combat replay, based on what my orders are and what the Japanese players' orders are. Those orders will be resolved simultaneously, as we saw at the beginning of this episode. After you see what happens, it generates a save file that you have, and then the Japanese player issues their orders. After the Japanese player issues their orders, they send them back to me along with the replay, because it's the same for both of us. I see a slightly different replay than the Japanese player because of fog of war, but it's the same results. And so I see the replay that Japan generated. I get the file that has Japan's orders in it. I issue my orders, and then I send them back to Japan, and then they simultaneously resolve them in that next turn replay the next time the Japanese player opens it up. So each player issues their orders individual of the other, but when the game resolves the orders, it's all resolved in what we call WIGO, where you have basically simultaneous turn resolutions, despite orders being issued separately. Like, I don't get to see his orders. I just see the outcome of the turn replay. Thanks, Ko. So Ko in the chat is helping me with logistics, and he said on turn 32, so about a month into the war, China had 60,000 total supply in all of these bases. It is now up to 180,000. So we've actually tripled our starting supply in China. So that's very good news for the Chinese, who tend to start out with considerable amounts of troops that are disabled, if you will, or not ready to fight. Basically, they're kind of knocked out of the fight. And so when you have considerable supply there, you can draw a lot of troops out of the pools. China has a huge amount of manpower, but they often lack the supply to deploy it. Is it just the 2K every turn, Ko, or do we also get the extra supply coming through Burma? I thought we did get supply coming through Burma. We've also looked at replacing leadership in a lot of the Chinese units to upgrade the quality of the commanders. Lieutenant General Su, I guess, is the only one to command this corps, but you can change different units' commanders. Not apparently there, though. So with that being said, and D Gatsby, thanks for the follow. I think that's it for this turn, right? I mean, I'm not sure if anybody wants to see anything else. We looked at upcoming replacements for our ships. We looked at air losses, pilots. Wish you could upgrade the roads. Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I don't. There's only so much you can do. You're already doing way more than any one commander did. Radio intel? Yeah, we can look at that. So we take a look at SIGINT. Really just looking for indications of movement. So for example, we've got the 112th Japanese Army Air Force Base Force. Those are units that support bases, build runways, and provide aviation support, are on the transport Narito Maru, moving to Palembang. So we know he's moving some engineers and Air Force units to Palembang. And then we've got a bunch of locations of different units. Okay. But yeah. So I know I had intended to stream longer tonight, guys. This is a very short stream, but I'll be honest, I'm flat out exhausted. Long work week. our daughter had to stay home today as well because someone in her daycare had a parent who has come down with COVID. So they basically closed the daycare for the day and are waiting to see if the kid ends up testing positive, and we'll go from there, whether they open back up next week. So I am just beat. So I don't think we're going to be streaming longer. I'm like about to pass out. But I appreciate you guys coming out for a short stream today. If the Packers do really well, maybe we'll stream late tomorrow. Otherwise, probably Sunday. But we'll try and stream again soon. I do want to look at Rome, oh my goodness, Expeditions Rome game. I also want to look at The Troop, which is a World War II tactical game. And then maybe even Warno. I'm not sure. So hopefully the Packers win, and they win convincingly, and it's over real fast. And I guess the alternative is that if they're getting their ass absolutely kicked, I may just jump on and stream anyway. So we'll see. But with that being said, I will take blood sacrifices to make our torpedoes work next turn. Maybe we'll get one of these subs out in front of these carriers and get lucky. I'm willing to lose some of these subs, even if it means any chance at all of hitting a carrier. We haven't lost many subs yet in the war. Take a look at the total ships sunk, and we take a look at submarines. All dates. Japan's lost a fair amount, but the U.S. has only lost 2 subs so far, an S-boat, the S-38, and the Sarjo. We've also lost 2 Dutch subs, the K9 and the K8 or K7. So we've lost 4 Allied subs. I don't know how accurate the intelligence is, but if you exclude these small submarines, these midget submarines, the 3 HA boats, the Japanese have lost RO-60, I-170, 158, 153, 124, 25, 20, 19, 7, and 1. So Japanese have actually lost 4, 6, 8. Oh my God, I'm having trouble seeing. It's like 9 or 10 subs, which is a considerable amount of submarines for the Japanese. Yeah, we got 21 on turn 1 in our game. You got 21 subs or lost 21 subs? But when the torpedoes start working, yeah, we've only lost 4 subs. The Japanese have lost way more than us. And if we take a look here, we lost 1 in December and 1 in January, and we haven't lost an American submarine since then. We've lost 1 Dutch sub in Feb and 1 in March. 1 in April. So we're losing a little bit less than 1 sub a month. I think that's easily sustainable for the Allies. Oh, Helsing, you sank 21 at Manila on turn 1. Yeah, I mean, the Japanese did launch. So historically, the Japanese launched an air raid. You guys, people know about the Pearl Harbor attack. They know to a lesser extent about the bombing of Clark Field and the destruction of the American Air Force on the Philippines. But they also bombed, was it Caveat Naval Base in the Philippines, which was the Asiatic Fleet's headquarters. And the Asiatic Fleet for the American Navy had a heavy cruiser, the USS Houston, which would be sunk at Java Sea. I want to say they had the light cruiser Marblehead, I think it was, and then a handful of old destroyers. But what they actually had was like over 20 modern submarines in the Philippines, forward deployed to be ready to work against the Japanese. Now, they didn't accomplish much when the war started because of a few things. One, American submarine skippers were trained to basically fire blind using sonar with dumb torpedoes. That was not effective at all. And so you had very passive and sort of timid captains firing with absolutely no chance at all of hitting their targets. In addition to that, you also had massively defective torpedoes that would blow up early, that would run too deep. That didn't get solved till late 43 or early 43. But like you can imagine if they had working torpedoes, what maybe they could have accomplished. The Japanese did when they bombed Caveat Naval Base. I think they sank 1 submarine with aerial bombs from Nels and Betty's. But the biggest thing they did that helped, I guess the torpedoes didn't work, so I don't know how important it was. But they did hit, I think it was a tender, and then also the base itself. And I want to say they destroyed 200 torpedoes when the ship went up, And so they, the Americans immediately, just at the snap of a finger, started the war with a critical torpedo shortage for their submarines in the Philippines. So I don't know how much it mattered because the torpedoes weren't working. But if they had been working, it would have mattered. And the Americans really didn't. One, they didn't fix the torpedo, but two, they didn't have enough torpedoes until 43 anyway. Like, industry couldn't produce them. If you think about like modern smart munitions or, air-to-air missiles or, surface-to-air missiles or whatever today, their manufacturing is very delicate. It's very, technical. It's very slow. If you look at the Persian Gulf War, the Americans were firing off Patriot missiles massively more quickly. They were going to expend all their Patriot missiles in like a couple of months at the rate they were firing them off, even with increased production. But like, the torpedo was one of the most state-of-the-art weapon systems of its time, from a technical and a manufacturing process. And so the Americans were really struggling to keep up with manufacturing enough of them as well. But that's enough of my rambling tonight, or I guess this morning. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave your thoughts down below, and I will catch you guys next time for the next episode of War in the Pacific, Admirals Edition. I'm hoping that tomorrow on Sunday, I will be posting my top 5 strategy game video of 2021. I'm a little bit late on that. It's been a few weeks, but I did want to go ahead and get that out soon. So I'm saying it here to hold myself to doing that. It's been a little bit of a crazy couple of weeks. Haven't posted as many videos. There's some stuff I definitely want to look at in the future. So I am hoping to play some Expeditions Rome. That game seems to be pretty popular. It's a new sort of RPG and strategy game out. Also, The Troop did send me a key, so I want to go ahead and take a look at that game. It's a turn-based World War II war game. And maybe a little bit of Warno as well. I don't do a ton of like multiplayer gaming on this channel. I played some Wargame Red Dragon back in the day. I think I did a review for wargamer.com of Wargame Red Dragon. I think I also did some videos for them for Wargame Air Land Battle. I think. But that's been a long time. I didn't play a ton of Steel Division. These are the games by Eugen. But they just released in early access a pretty bare bones version of their newest update to their Cold War series. So I'll probably do some of that on the channel as well. If you're interested in joining these streams, because this was taken from a live stream for my Twitch channel, probably the next one will be Sunday night, around 9 o'clock Central Standard Time, give or take an hour. So click the link in the description if you're interested in following me on Twitch. You get a notification when I go live. I could do Saturday, but I'm a Packer fan, so go Pack Go. And they're going to be playing Saturday night. So I will probably not stream Saturday unless the game turns into a rout for the Packers losing, in which case I might turn it off and do a stream, but we'll see. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave your thoughts down below as always. And until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching. And until next time, I'm out.